Hey, this is Rob Swanson with the Real Estate Mogul Show. Let's get into it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Rob Swanson back here with part of the crew. Back for another Real Estate Mogul Show. We've got a fun one for you today. If you've ever sat back and said, I wonder how I could scale my real estate investing business. Heck, you might be just sitting there saying, how do I get started? Right? And eventually what happens is you're going to get started and then things are going to pick up some steam. The steamroller is going to get cruising down the track. And all of a sudden you're going to find, I got too much to do. I need to add some team members. And as you add team members, new complexities come into your business. So today we're going to be talking about what does it look like as your business grows and as you add team members? What are the most successful real estate investors out there doing from a team structuring standpoint? And then how do you keep all of it organized? How do you give the right people access to the right things in your business without feeling like there's a great business risk facing you because now your team is growing, you're bringing people on board, and how do you handle all of this? And so these are things that we talk about and think about a lot, and we're going to be diving into this because it's a part of the product that we provide the real estate investing world through FreedomSoft. And so we're going to be diving into that. We're going to be talking about how are you going to build your team, how are you going to scale your business up, and how are you going to do it in the most efficient and effective way. Mike, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good to be here.
What's cracking?
Froggy today.
Yeah.
I sound a little bit froggy today. I've been fighting off a cold, but
man, it's been going around. It's been going around.
Yeah, it hit a couple of our kids, and then my wife started coughing, and then I thought, okay, I made it, and then woke up and I didn't. So here we go.
Yeah,
Tis the season.
Yeah, man, it is the season. I think it's been run. I mean, almost everybody that I talk to, in some way, is being touched by this sickness is kind of running around the world.
Yeah.
Now, the good news is. The good news is for me and my family, my wife is a master homeopath. Like, she's really good at it. So when you start to get sick, go down to your local natural grocers, aconite and bryonia, bam, it just wipes it away. So I had a day where I started to feel it. She hit me with the stuff, and I mean, all natural, no meds, all good. All good.
So
Incredible.
I'm taking notes over here because I have those in our house. But what was the second one? Bryonia?
Aconite and bryonia. Yep. That is for when you first feel the sort of onsets of a sickness, flu type thing. When you first feel it,
that.
yeah, you take it within the first 24 hours, and that will usually wipe it away. And I'm not the pro. My wife is the pro, so I don't know. I don't know how like frequently you take it, but anyway. It's all good.
Yep. Call up Melita.
Yeah, we'll have to just call her up. Exactly. Well, I don't listen to the doctor, but I do listen to my wife. All right, guys. Well, hey, so good news on my part. Just a quick little side note. I was a 2-airplane owner there for a few months because I bought the new plane and I hadn't sold the old plane. And I got the old plane through its annual inspection and got a buyer, listed it, got a buyer, got it through the pre-buy, did all of the stuff. And then I wasn't planning to do this, but I ended up flying it kind of for the last flight of the old airplane, 5 hours from Denver out to the Bend, Oregon area and dropped it off. So I delivered it last week to the new buyer. So it was a little bit of a sad moment to watch the hangar doors go down on it and know that it's now out of my care. But you know, it's all right too.
What was that like going back to the J after basically flying the turbo for a handful of months now?
Yeah.
Or the rocket?
Yeah.
What was it like going back to the that J?
It was very comfortable. And you know, it's a nice blend of speed and fuel efficiency, right? It's got good range, it's got good useful load, it's got good speed, it's got good fuel efficiency, But the good speed, I wanted great speed. And so I was willing to sacrifice some fuel efficiency for great speed. And so it was really fun. It reminded me why I fell in love with that airplane the first time I flew it. And the first time I flew this airplane, I flew it from Denver over to Salt Lake City. And it was about a 3-hour flight. And the reason I just fell in love with it is because it's just crisp, it's nimble, it's sharp. It feels like you're flying a little sports car. And that's what I wanted. Now, it's interesting, putting nearly 600 hours into that airplane, flying it. It feels less like a sports car today than it did when I first got into it, because I'm just so used to it, right? I'm so comfortable flying it. It doesn't feel like it has all the same feelings, but I'm just so used to the feelings that it doesn't feel as sports car-ish because I'm so far ahead of the airplane. When I first got in, it felt fast. Now it feels normal. And anyway, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yep.
The final ride.
Yeah, totally.
The final ride.
Which wasn't even going to be, but ended up happening. And
yeah, exactly. It was cool.
Made a pivot, did it.
I'm sure you were excited about the last flight there that you got to do it.
Yeah, and so it was instrument conditions in Denver the morning I took off. And so I had to file IFR to get out of Denver. I climbed up above the clouds. I canceled my IFR. I picked up flight following. I turned direct, went up high, and just went straight towards Bend. On the way, I stopped at one little airport, and I came in, and it was right on my route. So I literally didn't have to turn off my route at all. I just came in, entered the pattern, landed, pulled up to the fuel tanks, filled up both tanks, jumped back in the airplane, taxied out, took off. I literally turned the airplane for fuel in about 15 minutes, and then was back on because I was trying to meet or get to Bend, drop the airplane off, do all the stuff that I had to do there, finish the paperwork, then get a ride over to the Redmond airport and catch my 5:30 flight. And so I was fighting a time crunch, but we made it because here I am back in Denver.
Nice.
Clearly you made it.
Clearly I made it. So nice. Mike, let's do this. Let's jump in and let's talk about what do we hear. Let's do this. As people begin to scale their real estate investing business, as people start to grow, they have some success. They close their first deal. They begin to close deals, 1 to 3 a week, a month consistently, and they get a rhythm where they wake up, their feet hit the floor, and they know how to close real estate deals. It's no longer a mystery, right? They know the actions to take.
Yep.
What does it look like as people begin to think about growing their team or their first hire or bringing somebody on, whether it's a virtual assistant or a local assistant or, a stay-at-home mom that's looking for some part-time work or a full-time team member? What do you see people typically doing in that space?
Yeah, typically I would say the most common additions to a team come in the acquisition side, followed by dispositions, where it's just, take newer investor, like you just said, they start closing some transactions, they start to build some consistency, and then it seems like the next move that I see most common is, let's bring on some additional personnel to start to do more of that.
Yep.
And I don't see anybody go out and say, okay, I'm starting to do 3, 4, 5 deals a month. I need an accounting team. I've never heard that conversation. It's always, let's bring some, like I said, let's bring some personnel on to start to do more of this, to ramp up the, let's go find more deals. Let's go sell more deals. Let's get the deal volume up.
Yep.
And then, starts to expand into some other areas from there. But it looks like, acquisitions team, more people on the phone talking to sellers, more people learning how to make offers, more people learning how to analyze deals, have some conversation on the disposition side. And it's kind of interesting, Rob. I've seen some teams where the acquisitions person, meaning the person on the team that found the deal, is then responsible to find the buyer. And
Yep.
I've seen that work. And then I've seen other teams set up where they say, hey, well, I'm going to go build like 3 or 4 acquisitions people and have one dispositions person. Maybe that's the original business owner. They decide, hey, I really like working with the buyers and that side of the business or whatever the case. And they say, I'm going to have multiple acquisitions people feeding one dispositions person. And I've seen that work. So I've seen it, a couple potential, like a fork in the road or maybe 2 different paths. But
Yep.
for the most part, excuse me, I see it go, let's do more acquisitions. Let's ramp up the volume and let's bring some people in to help do that.
Yeah, and so if we think about breaking that down and breaking that apart, there's chunks to a successful real estate investing business, right? And it doesn't have to be just a newer investor, right? This same sort of thinking and logic applies to an experienced investor. If you were to go into an experienced investor's business and look at the chunks of that business and who's kind of sitting in what seat, you're going to find the same general breakouts that a newer investor realizes they're going to need in order to continue to grow. One just has those seats already filled and established. One is trying to fill. So one of the things that I always tell people, one of the first hires you need to make is an administrative or an executive assistant. You need an EA. You need somebody that is just going to take the busy work off of you as the business owner, as the founder, that busy work off of you. And you need an executive assistant that's kind of your utility player, right? To use some baseball language, right? Somebody that can kind of play any position, can plug in where they need to plug in. They're a utility player. And so, because I start to think about the breakout of the business from your lead generation and lead management, right? So a lot of times you'll see on teams, you'll see a lead manager, and that lead manager is responsible for list building, for running marketing campaigns, and then managing the distribution and the follow-up of inbound leads to make sure that the lists being built are being properly managed and marketed to on a cadence that is producing inbound leads, and that those leads are going through then the leads life cycle and getting distributed to the right acquisitions people, making sure that the automation drips are getting triggered and all of those things, right? So that essentially no lead gets left behind. So you've kind of got that front end lead manager role. And then from there, that lead manager's job is to feed the acquisitions team, right? And so you've got an acquisitions manager whose skill set is following up on leads, talking to leads, analyzing deals, making offers, running the numbers, and getting things across the finish line and under contract, right? That acquisitions person should be wholly focused on either prospecting, so outbound cold calling, or working inbound leads that are coming in through the different marketing efforts like direct mail or online marketing or whatever the case may be. And as that deal comes in and then hits the dashboard and goes under contract pushes it to the property's dashboard, right? And so I'm using a little bit of FreedomSoft language to describe this, right? Because there's a pipeline, there's a flow to this process. And you've got all the lists and the marketing tools, you've got the leads and the acquisitions process. And then once a lead goes under contract, so an offer has been made, it's been accepted by both parties, accepted by the seller, signed by the buyer, it goes to the property's dashboard. And that's typically where the dispositions team picks up if you're wholesaling, or it's where The rehab or the construction management team picks up if you're gonna close on it yourself and either fix and flip or buy and hold, right? If you're gonna renovate the property. So it hits that properties dashboard, and I always like to think about that as my dispositions. And so if we understand that basic structure, then one of the challenges that often comes up is, all right, I've got my CRM, I've got my technology in my real estate investing business. When it was just me, I had access to everything because I did everything. But now I'm going to go hire, Johnny and Joe and Jim or Sally and Susan and Stephanie, right? And they're going to sit in these different seats, from lead manager to acquisitions manager to dispositions rep, right? And the question then becomes is, do you want everybody on your team to have access to everything? And if the answer is no, how much control do you want to have over what they have access to, what they can see, for a couple of reasons. Number one, from a business sort of protection standpoint, right? So the more that everybody has access to, there's risk associated with that. And then it's also a focus component, right? Keeping people focused on their aspect of the job, because it's very easy if you were to give somebody access to your full CRM, and they can go look at your lists and see what marketing is being done, and they can go look at your inbound leads and the follow-up, and they can kind of poke around on all your campaigns. And then you can log into the properties dashboard, and you can see what deals are on the dashboard. It's very easy to sit there and be unfocused, not working towards your job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. This is what I thought you were getting to too. And this, it resonates with me, because when I was wholesaling I guess about a year ago now, I was using these team permissions. I had us both on our account. We could see everything. I had a VA that's, we hired to do some advanced research. We had a VA making some cold calls. One thing that you mentioned, which would have been, I think, a better use of our funds, would have been to, instead of hiring a VA to make cold calls, was hire like you said, an assistant or a transaction coordinator that could handle some of that, like extra stuff, like coordinating the closings and calling this person or calling that person. Because that's the stuff, to me, that when I was doing it would suck up a lot of my time, like all of a sudden.
Absolutely.
And led me right to this like investor roller coaster where I was so busy taking care of these little punctures in the hose that I didn't get to the playbook, right? And it was a hard management thing. But I think what the cool thing that FreedomSoft does, and as you grow your team from one up to however many you want, it gives exactly that, the opportunity for you to really manage what people are looking at, what they're doing, tracking their KPIs,
yep,
and staying on top of their systems.
Yep. Well, I think that one of the things that I have found in the years of running real estate acquisitions and dispositions teams, wholesaling businesses, fix and flip, buy and hold, doing all exit strategy, right? And what I have found is that if I focus my team by giving them access to what they need to have access to, they win. And if I go too wide and they have too much access, and I'm going to give an example, right? So I'll break this down. Take my dispositions team, right? Take my dispositions team. Let's say I've got 3 guys on my dispositions team, and I throw 12 deals up on the dashboard. My 3 dispositions guys and gals look at that dashboard and they don't know where to start. They think I got to sell all 12, right? They don't know where to start. And so what I try to do is I'll put on the property dashboard, each one of my dispositions folks has a unique 4 deals, right? So Johnny sees one, Jim sees, Johnny sees four, Jim sees four, and Joe sees four, right? And then we can rank them and say, today go sell this one, right? And that typically functions based on date, right? What's our inspection date? What's our close date? Like, what are the more urgent ones that we have to deal with today? And let's prioritize those, right? Sometimes there's just an obvious, easy one that, takes a 10-minute phone call to somebody and it's done, or you just know that you're going to close on that one yourself and you don't have to think about it. But when we're talking about this from a permissions standpoint, I want to dive in and talk a little bit about how FreedomSoft helps manage this, because the way FreedomSoft is broken apart as a software and technology, it's broken into blocks. So you can give somebody full access to a block or an area of FreedomSoft. You can then go narrower and you can give access to individual or multiple lists or campaigns. So you can give people access to specific buckets of leads, lists, campaigns, and workspaces. I should go all the way to workspaces because every acquisitions person operates inside of their own private workspace. And then you can go all the way down to the property level. And so you can say, I only want Johnny to have access to my leads area, this one campaign, or his private workspace, and only the leads that are associated with that workspace. That's all he can see. On the disposition side, I want Susan to only see these three properties. So you give Susan access to only the dispositions properties dashboard, and then you give Susan only access to those three properties. So when she logs in, that's all she sees. And now you have control and you have focus. I know, Mike, you talk with a lot of people, and coming off of different systems or moving into FreedomSoft, and this, for the more experienced investors, this tends to be something that they are like, whoa, I have a lot of granular control. What do you typically hear from people on that?
Well, for the experienced investors, they're excited to see what they can control because they understand. So if we boil this topic down, I think there's two words, and Rob, you've already brought them up, but it's risk and focus.
Yeah.
Right? If you've been building a business for 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, and you've got, clearly you have a vested interest in it and what the business is doing, and then you go to hire somebody on day one, maybe to do acquisitions, maybe disposition, something like that, but they shouldn't have keys to the kingdom, right? That's something that you earn, and that's something that as a business owner you give to people that you 100% trust, and that's the way it should be, right? You don't walk into a bank and just imagine the last time you walked into a bank. You've got some tellers working up front. You've got some loan officers that have a desk. Then you've got the C-suite people are not in the front, they're in back, they're on a second floor. If you were to ask the question, does everybody in this bank have access to the same things? The answer would be, of course not.
Right.
And what happens is, what's so interesting about this topic, and I just want to bring this up, is that people tend to get into real estate. They say, I want to go close some deals and make some money.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start to do that, and then they start to do it consistent, and then the number of deals starts to ramp up. And at some point in there, whether they realize it or not, they have to transition from deal doer to business owner.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about today.
Right.
This is a business owner level conversation. Of course, you're going to separate team members because that's what every business does. Why does every business do it? Because it makes sense to do it.
That's right.
That's how it should be done. And so your thinking has to change. And so what's really refreshing for the business owner level thinkers that find FreedomSoft is when they discover permissions, they just say, this is fantastic because I have a very trusted, business partner or, team lead there's a lot of different, I've heard a lot of different names, executive assistant, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
that person, and they need access to everything. That, that's like either your business partner or, your right-hand person.
That's right.
They help oversee everything. And then you have people that are, hey, when a new lead comes in, call them up and look to make an offer. And so while every job is important, not every job gets equal access. And so the business owners, in my experience, so the ones who can see it right away when they find FreedomSoft and permissions, they love it. They say, this is exactly what I need.
Yep.
And then what's cool about FreedomSoft is if you're one person and you're looking to go close your first deal, fantastic. But as your business grows, you're going to have to transition into business owner.
Yep.
And so the tech is already there to support that.
Well, let's look at it, because I think, people are hearing this and saying, well, let's see how this works, because, and what I think also, Mike, happens is as a newer investor comes in and they don't understand what they need yet, right? And so they don't apply the value to the ability to control permissions to the granular level at the beginning. And then, and so they might discount it, or they disregard it. They don't understand the value of what they're growing into. And then they get to a place in their business along the way where they find the need and the necessity for that. And they either have it or they don't. And so what I think we can do here is just kind of show people how this works. So I've pulled FreedomSoft up onto the screen. I'm going to go down to the settings area. And in the settings area, I can go down to people. And when you invite somebody into your FreedomSoft account, you get to choose, do they have full access, full account access, or do they have limited account access? And then here's where you begin to manage and control who has access to what. So we talked about kind of the chunks or the categories of the business, and you can give them access to tools and different areas of the application, from leads to the properties dashboard, to the buyers, to reporting, to the classroom, to the ability to use different marketing tools, list building tools. So you can take your lead manager and you can give them access to, say, Lead Finder, and you can give them access to the leads area, and you can give them access to the direct mail system. You can give them access to the various marketing tools. And so this is categorically how you kind of first isolate people into certain areas and buckets of the business. And from there, you come down and you say, okay, now I want to consider next step of granular down. So we've got the area of the software that I can see and have access to. And then I want to control inside of that area, what do they actually see? What are the unique records? So lists and campaigns and workspaces are all controlled right here. So you can give somebody permission access to only certain buckets, if you will, inside of the software. And so what that means is that only the records inside of those buckets are associated with that list, that campaign, or that workspace will be available to that person. And so this is how you start the process of creating permissions. And if we go from here then, and we go over to our leads dashboard, we go down to our pipeline, and we'll just pull up a list right here. You can control in another area right here with list permissions, and only people that have account administrative access can actually change these permissions. So right here on an individual list, you can select who has access to this. What that does is it grants access to only the records that are associated with that list. So now a person can only see those records. Everything else, the other 10,000 records in the account are hidden because the person only has access to this one particular list. Now, what's interesting is when you go over to the properties dashboard, when we're thinking about leads, that control comes from the list itself, the campaign that is being run, the marketing campaign, or the workspace that they have access to. Once you get over to the properties dashboard, right, and this is where something is under contract, and if we just were to click in on this, you'll notice that property permissions are controlled by each individual property, because you only have a handful of properties under contract at any given time. And the way we like to think about this properties tab is it's your properties dashboard. It's what's under contract. A lead is something you're working on. A property is something that has been, an offer has been accepted, it's under contract, and it sits on your dashboard. And I'll show you kind of how we think about this. I'm just going to go over here. I'm just going to click on one in this account. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say under contract. So we've made an offer. The offer's been accepted. I'm going to go ahead and pop that up, and it's going to immediately ask me, now that this lead is under contract, do you want to convert it to a property? And I'm going to click convert it to a property, and what it's going to do is it's going to take it from the leads area and push it onto the properties dashboard. And so you'll notice we went from the leads tab over to the properties dashboard, and you'll now see that that property is right here with status equals under contract.
And that's sort of where you define that line, Rob, right, of acquisitions and then dispositions
That's
teams.
Right. That's right.
Where that would push over to that properties tab, and then now your dispo team, based on their permissions, can take a look at it,
Yep.
distribute it how they need to, and handle it and get it across the finish.
That's right. So my dispo team is going to log into FreedomSoft, and if I've given them access to the properties dashboard, they're not going to have access to the tools or the marketing or the leads or the projects, or the dispo team would have access to properties. So what do we have under contract? And typically our buyers tab. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll give them access to various reports as well. And so if we look at the properties, then if we click into one, I can say permissions. Nope, I don't want Mike to see this one. So I can take Mike off of that, update it, and now Mike would not see that. When I go back in there, Mike doesn't have access to it. So I can distribute on a very granular level the properties to the dispositions guy or gal that I want to work those particular leads. And so if you have a lead manager, this becomes very popular by the lead managers, because they can grant and control who sees what and who's working on what, kind of behind the scenes. So the team just logs in and they see what they see, and they know what they've got to go work on. So it becomes really, really easy to manage.
It's really flexible too.
It's super flexible. Yeah, it's super flexible. So I always think, again, it starts with the category within the application, whether the marketing tools, the list building tools, the marketing tools, the leads, the properties, dispositions dashboard, the buyers list, all of that stuff. And then it goes granular down to, your lists, your campaigns, your workspaces. So only the records inside of those particular tags, and then down further to individual properties to the disposition side. So very, very powerful. Another big one that people like, if I just flip back here, and Mike, you probably have comments on this, because I think people mention this to you all the time.
But it might be the one you're about to say.
Yeah, I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to go limited access, and this ability to restrict exports right here.
Exactly what I was going to say. That's right.
Yeah. So this has access to data export feature. So if it's checked, yes. If it's unchecked, the person cannot select your buyer's list or select your seller's list, select all, and then export that to a CSV. So they can't take your list. And the way this works, if I just leave it checked, if I go over here and if I select all right here and go down, I can export that list. However, If I go over here to my settings and my people, and if I have full account control, so I can't do it on my account. But if I were to uncheck this exports, that export option is not even available. And
Yep.
people,
Not even visible.
experienced business owners love that ability. And look, whether you're working with a VA, whether you're brand new and working with a VA, or you're an experience with a team of people, 3 to 5 to 7 or more people, the ability to control your data and protect your data is huge.
Hey, Rob, I'll give you an example. I had a business owner email in 2 weeks ago.
You slide Mike over there? Yeah.
And he says, he emailed me. I've talked to this guy multiple times. He runs a pretty good sized team in FreedomSoft. And he emails me in and he goes, he says, hey, Mike, I just had to let somebody go. I want to make sure they didn't mess up anything in our account or take anything. And long story short, I had a little bit of dialogue with him, but he had the permissions set up correct.
Yep.
Wasn't able to export anything. This he's been a long time user. So I went to our tech team and said, hey guys, did you see any exports come out or any funny business kind of behind the scenes? And there wasn't. And that was a testament to, I did the original onboard when this guy and his business partner came on 2 years ago, maybe, give or take. And we talked through exactly what we're talking about today, permissions.
Yep.
And they had a scenario where somebody left, and I could tell, I was reading through the lines. He didn't say this, but under less than ideal circumstances, which welcome to the reality of running a business, right? And he wanted to make sure that they didn't take anything with them that they shouldn't. And the final verdict was they didn't.
Yep.
Because the permissions were set up. So it was a brief explanation early on when we onboarded them. Then they followed, the recommendations like they should have,
Yep.
like what you just showed there, and set up the permissions for the different team members.
Yep.
And that's, a real world example of why they exist.
Yep.
And how effective they are. Because if that person had the ability to export, this particular guy and his business partner, they've been building their business. They were on a different system previously and then came over to FreedomSoft. So I helped onboard them a couple years ago. So, but the point is they've been at this for a number of years. And so they couldn't just have, or they certainly didn't want to have an employee come in, work with them temporarily and take, the list that they've been building, their buyers list, their network
Right.
with them. And they weren't able to. So
Yep.
anyway, real world example of
Totally.
permissions at work.
Totally. And real world example, and that same thing applies whether it's on the acquisition side or the disposition side. So yeah, that's really good. Well, when it relates to this, Mike, is there anything else that you think we hear on a regular, consistent basis from experienced business owners that a newer investor, again, may not even recognize the need for this yet, but as soon as they hire their first VA, their second VA, their first team member, all of a sudden this becomes real and relevant. Is there anything else?
Fast.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I would tell newer investors listening to this that FreedomSoft has been built by investors for investors. And so we know the things that you need now on day one, and we know the things that you're going to need in 6 months,
Right.
12 months, 2 years, 5 years, right? And so one of the things that's really refreshing to our newer investors that start, to build a consistent pipeline is that they discover, hey, the things that I need, the things I didn't know I needed on day one,
Yep.
it's already built in.
Yep.
And I would just tell, I would say experienced business owners, don't find yourself in a situation like that example that I just gave. And, you bring somebody on board and it doesn't work out and they wipe out 3, 5, 10 years of your hard-earned effort to build,
Yep.
A network and a buyer's list and those relationships. You can't have somebody just walk out the door with that. And, people do crazy things. Imagine that.
Imagine that.
So you've got to protect it. So Rob, I think it comes down to risk and focus. We covered both. But yeah, permissions they are one for the experienced investors that have a team. They are one of the top priority items that draws them to FreedomSoft. No question about it, because they understand risk and focus.
Yep. Love it.
So,
Love it.
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, guys, this was hopefully an interesting conversation for you. Hopefully it got you thinking about your business from the standpoint of those two things, risk and focus, right? And how you can use team permissions and an access control inside of your business using software and technology to keep your business moving forward and producing what you want it to produce. So with all of that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We're going to wrap this one up. If you did, do us a favor. Would you like this on your favorite social media application? Would you share it with your friends? Would you like it on YouTube? And subscribe. That way you're going to get all of our upcoming episodes notified when we drop. So this episode, as you may have noticed, has been brought to you by FreedomSoft. And if you're sitting back asking yourself, am I using the right software? Do I have everything I need in my software to get everything I want? Do I have the power? Do I have the tools? Go check out FreedomSoft. We encourage you to do that. All right, guys, Rob Swanson with the team. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Yep.